Jamal George, and I'll, to introduce the speaker, I would like to say gun violence is the leading cause of deaths in children aged 1 to 19 in the United States. School shootings continue to occur at a relentless pace. With no end in sight, the speaker asks, what do we go from here? Declan Shalvey, where do we go from here? Declan Shalvey.
Nashville, Tennessee, March 27th, 2023. A little over a month ago, a killer walked into a schoolroom and killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults. And so the carnage of killing our children, massacring our children here in the US continues. And for the umpteenth time, I asked myself, where do we go from here? Sandy Hook School, Connecticut, December the 14th, 2012. Many of you know that I've been part of startups on the East Coast, and one of those startups was in Connecticut. From the years 2014 to the year 2020, I traveled sometimes once a week, once every other week, I should say, to the East Coast. I would travel 25 times a year. And when I would travel from where I would stay to where we did the product development, I would take Highway 84. And each day I would see the signs for Sandy Hook Elementary School. Now, I know some of you on this call will remember what happened then. 20 first and second graders, 6 and 7-year-old children, lost their lives to an AK-15 in the hands of a deranged young man. Now, I know the image that occurs to most of us here in the US when we think of the East Coast, New England in the fall, is those gentle, beautifully colored leaves fluttering to the ground. But the image that comes to my mind when I think of the East Coast as I pass Sandy Hook was the image of those tiny bodies fluttering under a rage of high-velocity bullets, entering their bodies, destroying their organs, and extinguishing their young lives. And as I think about those moments, I pray that those children died instantly. But I know in my heart that many of them did not. And as those children lay on the floor and as their lifeblood pumped from their tiny bodies, what was the last conscious thought going through their mind? Mom, what is happening to me? And I want you to take a moment and imagine your children as first or second graders lying on that floor, dying on that floor. What was the last conscious thought that would go through your child's mind? By April the 1st of this year, there were some 89 school incidents where people were killed or injured here in the US. That's almost one a day in our first quarter. CNN recently published an article that said that in the US, our children are 60 times more likely to be involved in a gun incident than the combined numbers of children in Germany, France, Italy, UK, Canada, and Japan. With 25% less people in the US than in those combined countries, your children, my grandchildren, are 60 times more likely to be involved in a gun incident. And other related statistics is that by 2020, gun deaths was the major killer of our children from 1 to 19 years of age. And so the carnage of our children continues. Now, let me state the obvious. But I want to remind you that our children are totally defenseless against these lethal killing machines. Most of those guns, by the way, were procured legally here in the US. Now, I want to take you back to 2007, to Virginia Tech, where 32 people were killed in a massacre on that campus. A journalist working for the New Yorker published an article, and for me, it's very, very powerful. And I want to read directly from that so you hear his words. The cell phones in the pockets of the dead students were still ringing when we were told that it was wrong to ask why. As the police cleared the bodies from the Virginia Tech engineering building, the cell phones rang in the eccentric varieties of ringtones, as parents kept trying to see if their children were okay. It is heart-rending to imagine the feelings of the police as they carried the bodies and heard the ringing. It is unbearable to imagine the feelings of the parents who were calling their children, their dread, their desperate hope for a sudden answer and the bliss of reassurance, or their dawning, terrifying awareness of the beginnings of their never-ending grief. But the parents, the rest of us, were told that this was not the right moment to ask how this shooting happened, specifically why an obviously disturbed student with a history of mental illness was able to buy guns whose essential purpose is to kill people, and why it happens over and over and over again in America. At a press conference, Virginia's Governor Tim Kaine said, "People who want to make gun deaths their political hobby horse to ride, I've got nothing but loathing for them." At this point, he said, it's about comforting family members and helping this community heal. And so, to those who want to try to make this into some little crusade, I say, take it elsewhere. So what do the politicians tell us to do? They tell us to pray. They tell us to pray for those who have died. They tell us to pray for those who are injured. They tell us to pray for the ravaged families. They tell us to pray for the distraught communities. They tell us to offer minutes of silence in exchange for their entire lives of the children who have been killed. In minutes of silence, we cannot even begin to feel the eternal grief of those families. But I personally have another experience. I lived through 30 years of domestic violence in Ireland, where almost 4,000 people lost their lives over 30 years. And let me remind you, in an area smaller than the Bay Area here in California, we lost 10 people a month, 12 months of the year for 30 plus consecutive years. But then we decided we needed to do more. Prayer and silence was not enough. We went after the killing machines. We went after the guns and removed them from our society. We saved countless lives, and we began to live like a civilized society once more. Now, as a US citizen, I believe that I have personally failed every one of those children that has died here in the US. And I want to say that every other citizen here in the US, I believe, has failed those children. Our children are our most precious resource, but they cannot keep themselves safe in this environment that we, the adults, have created. Guns may be indigenous in this country, but that is not a reason to allow the carnage to continue. I believe it is our moral and ethical responsibility to do something about this situation and protect our precious children. So here in the US, we have to do more. There are some 400 million guns in the US, among 330 people, including our children. In the US, we have 10 times more guns than our equivalent nations economically. and we have 10 times the number of gun deaths. In a civilized democracy, we do not need that number of guns to live our lives, particularly when those guns are the biggest killer of our children. Guns may well be indigenous, as I said, to this society with the Second Amendment, but I believe that this is not sufficient reason for us not to do something. If we do not do something, we will have another Columbine, we will have another Virginia Tech, we will have another Orlando, Florida, we will have another Sandy Hook, we will have another Uvalde, and we will have another Nashville. And I don't know if we as a society can survive that. But I do know we have to do more. We have to get the killing machines, we have to get the guns, and we have to remove them from our society. That, fellow Toastmasters, is where I suggest we go from here. Back to you.
Thank you, Declan. And with that, I would like for everyone to fill out the evaluation form for the next 2 minutes. Timer, we get 2 minutes on the clock. Thank you.